Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Don Grodoff. Along with my wife Gina, we have a practice called Focused Healthy Family, helping families get past the behavior and anxiety issues naturally. We also produce the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, where we are advocates for our own family and others dealing with OCD and anxiety. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, we do interviews, provide resources, and information for treatment and support of OCD recovery. We also want to hear from you, your comments, and if you want to tell your story, we want to put it up on the podcast on our Stories from the OCD side. Our goal in these podcasts is to raise awareness of and advocate for the recovery from obsessive compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. Now, before we get to that podcast, let's hear about our sponsor.
Today I'm here to talk about Q Science's sleep spray. Q Sciences has a number of different sprays. There's a melatonin sleep spray that contains melatonin, 5-HTP, and L-theanine. We've used other melatonin products to help our children with falling asleep. Melatonin is something that occurs naturally in our body that helps us quiet and calm down for sleep. And yet I really feel like I've seen a difference in the spray versus other products. Our youngest is here to talk about it. What things did you like better about the spray versus the other things?
I don't like the chew tablets because they leave like a weird taste, and they're mainly like they also have like you get bits in your teeth.
Okay, so Q Science's spray.
It's a lot better, I'd say. The taste is pretty decent and it works well.
Okay. I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
There are a lot of supplement products out there, yet you want one that's of good quality. Check out Q Sciences for your family.
Now, let's get to that podcast. This podcast was recorded October 15th, 2021. This is podcast number 62, 10 words you should, best not say. So, I talk a lot about, I did a whole thing on arm length awareness, about awareness and how to become aware and how to change anxiety by becoming aware. In that process, I talk about how to find the things that trigger us into anxiety so that we can change those thoughts, change those actions, change those activities. And so there are some words that I talk about in this that we really don't need to use. And on top of it, we need to listen for, because we probably are using them already. So I wanted to go through this list for you to understand what these words might be, for you to be able to listen for these words, catch these words, because they are words that probably are the start of a trigger statement, a statement that drives your anxiety. And so you want to pay attention and really start listening. This is what I talk about when I talk about becoming more conscious in how you live, is listening to yourself, being aware of what's going on inside of you, both in your mind and in your body, physically, to understand what's going on so that you can understand if your body's not working the way it needs to and how it needs to be changed. And in your mind, how it's working so it can work properly and clearly, because it is operating everything. It is running everything in your body. So we really want to listen. And so these are the 10 big words. There's probably ones that are more specific and personal to yourself that can be triggers. But these are words that a lot of times are involved in triggers that we need to listen to. And of course, the first one is the word should. And that's why I kind of said it that way in my title. I started to say should, and I went, oops, no. Um, should is one of those guilt-ridden words. It's looking back on the past, on something you probably did or said that you now regret or wish you hadn't said, but you beat yourself up for it. So it's changing that to something like, I wish. I wish I hadn't said that versus I shouldn't have said that. The second word is always. And I say this one because if you think about it, like especially in an argument statement, when you're arguing with somebody, you're always doing that stupid thing to me, you know, it becomes a word that in truth is not truthful because, you know, I would say 99.9% of the time that person isn't doing whatever that is or saying whatever it is 24/7, 365, you know. And so it's really not a truth. He's not really always, or she is not always, or that person is not always, or that thing is not always happening 24/7, 365. And so, but the problem with it, and I just used one of them, I used but in there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The problem with it is that the mind can lock it in as being an always truth. And that's what we don't want to do. Another one, the third one, is never, which kind of falls in that same realm. Same thing. When you're arguing, you never remember to do that, or you never, you know, never, never, never. And 24/7, 365, is that really true? No. But again, in our mind, it locks it in as a truth and kind of solidifies it, especially the more we use it. So we really want to use something like, there are times when you forget to do that. Yeah, or sometimes, instead of like never or always, sometimes you forget to take the trash out. Sometimes you let things go. The fourth one is why. I've really learned that in the coaching work and the work I do, working with people with the EFT and my sessions I do, I find why is another one that's very guilt-ridden. Why'd you do that? Well, well, because I just did it, you know, kind of thing. And to me, it sends up walls that we don't need to have up. They're blocking us. So instead of that, what I like to do is use a question like what? You know, what was behind that? What was the reason for that? Just curious as to, you know, ask it in that format helps to keep the walls from you know, what is this problem coming to me for? You know, a lot of times instead of questioning myself, why is that? Why is that happening? Why am I doing this? I like to look at what is it here for? What did that problem show up for to help me to resolve? The fifth one is but. I talked about that a few seconds ago here. You know, you think about this phrase, I love you, but. Well, anything before the but is negated. I love you, but there's a problem. You know, no. What I like to do is replace it with something like, the problem is. You know, especially when you talk, we teach this in our communication course, when you're talking with a child. You know, I really like what you did, but just negates that whole concept. You could say, you know, I really like the fact that you did this. The problem I'm seeing though is that we need to also look at this, you know, or as I see it, you know, stuff like that helps to soften that blow behind that, you know. The sixth one I just came across recently in a conference that I was listening to, and he talked about the word ought. I ought to do that. That just has a lot of weakness to it. I think something like I would prefer you to smoke outside instead of you ought to smoke outside. you know. The other one I learned at number 7 in the same conference he talked about must. And I could see that it would put a lot of pressure on somebody. You must get this right, you know. And the one I thought about, I don't think in this conference he gave an alternative to it. I'd have to go back and listen. What I came up with is it's important to consider, you know, for example, it would be important for me to consider looking for a new job instead of I must get a new job. Number 8, whatever. I think that's a famous one by teenagers. Whatever, you know. And I think it has a lot of some kind of punishment factor to it or something like that. Um, versus saying maybe something I thought this was one I thought of as an example. It is your choice. It's your choice to think that way. You know, instead of saying whatever you're thinking, whatever, you know. And so that one I just thought about it as I thought about it when I've used it myself. It really does have some guilt connotations to it. It has some uh, just some anxiety behind it because it's kind of like I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what you think, and whether it does or not matter to me what you think, being able to approach it in a way that doesn't slam the other person, and I feel like that whatever kind of slams that person. Number 9 is gotta. Really, it's got to. I've got to get this done. I've got to. There again, in certain circum here, this word and the next one are ones that it depends on the circumstance of how you use it. But used in certain ways, it can have a lot of guilt or pressure to it, and it doesn't guide you in the right direction. I gotta get this. You know, I learned this from my own personal thing of saying, I gotta get more money coming in. I gotta get this. I gotta do, you know, if I don't get this client, I gotta get this client. And it really kind of again falls into the line of not really being truthful. I don't I'm not going to die if I don't get this money. I'm not going to die if I don't get this next client. Yet it puts a lot of anxious pressure on me or anybody that uses it to feel like they've got to, and which that pressure in turn leads to anxiety and stress. So it to me is one that if you're using that word, there's a good chance that you're putting a lot of pressure and a lot of anxiety on yourself, and that's a trigger to get that anxiety going, to increase that anxiety. Because the next one kind of falls in line with it too. It's the have to. Like I have to do that. You know, and there's a lot of times it's something that you don't have to do, but you put enough pressure on yourself, and you angst over it so much, you know. So instead of that, what so instead of something like I've got to get more money, it might be something better to say I am finding ways to bring more money to myself, or um, I have to get this work done. Might be better to say something like I am doing my best to get this done. So you know, and especially these last two kind of lead to this idea, and this is going to be a little bit out there, but this idea of the law of attraction. Roundabout way, how do you get there? Wow, you know, but it really does kind of play into this because in the law of attractions, it's about really kind of letting go and going with the flow. And by doing that, changing your energy and allowing it to come to you versus trying to pull it to you. I gotta get this. No, I am opening up now for this to come to me. It's this whole idea of the energy you put out is the energy you get back. You know, I always say, for a lot of people to understand it, they think about the Bible. The Bible says, "What you sow, so shall you reap." What you put out is what you get back. So if you're putting out an energy of, I gotta get this done, the force behind that, the constriction I feel behind that, or the have to, really just causes more of gotta to get to you. I gotta. It's another one might be, and I just thought of this, but the idea of I want. I like Neil Donald Walsh in his Conversation with God books talks about when you put out an I want statement, anything after want is the creative part. And if you're saying I want this, it just creates more want. And it's a that kind of statement has an untold part to it. I want this, and here's where there's a silent but in there, but I don't have it. And so with that kind of statement, you focus on the I don't have it versus focusing on what you desire, what you want to bring to you. You know, they Esther Hicks with Abraham Hicks talks about the fact that, we put forth the energy of what we desire, which the universe agrees and puts to us whatever we desire. The the problem with it is that we start focusing towards what we desire, but our mind turns us towards the fact that we don't have it. And we then end up focusing on what we don't have, creating more don't have. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but those statements can be ones that lead us down the wrong path of thinking and creating with our thoughts. We want to focus towards what we desire. So this is all part of becoming more conscious of how you live and using your mind to create the life you want. Again, kind of out there, but I really have seen this in my life. If I can get my mind flowing in the right direction, getting rid of the triggers, getting, not, let me restate that. Changing the perspective around the negative statements, the negative thoughts, the negative feelings I have, and getting my energy flowing in the right direction really brings to me the things that I desire. And I've seen it over with money, with relationships, with physical things, cars, whatever, both in myself and the patients or clients that I work with. So consciousness is about being aware, having awareness, being aware of what's going on in your mind and in your body to be able to stay ahead of things, know when things are not working well. We want our mind to flow in a beautiful energy and a beautiful pattern that helps create what you really desire. So these 10 words that I've talked about are ones that we want to listen to, be very aware of, so that we can stop the message and change its perspective. That's what we work on when I work with clients, is changing that perspective with those negative thoughts and working our way slowly to a more positive direction with it, a positive attitude, a positive energy that creates for us. So I hope these 10 words have helped you, and I hope you really start listening to yourself and catching some of this and catching the ones that are more personal to you, that trigger you, so that you can change the perspective around it. So that's the podcast for now. I would love to hear your comments and thoughts. So thank you for being part of this now, and I hope this has helped. Take care. This concludes this podcast. We hope you will subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, we would love your comments, or if you have a story to tell, we want to put it up on the podcast. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com to do that. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest, we love guests. So simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com and contact us from there. Gina and I are here to help you or your family get to a better place naturally. Simply visit focusedhealthyfamily.com for more information. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Keep tapping and focusing forward for a better way.